It can help us achieve the opposite of how we feel, such as calming us when we're nervous or invigorating us when we're tired. It can affect our physical health. High-tempo music can improve workouts, if you're one of those people. Music can also be a therapeutic tool for stress relief, healing, and emotional processing. Some therapists use music therapy to treat conditions like anxiety, dementia, and substance abuse disorders. It also boosts brain function. Music can improve memory, focus, and cognitive skills. Music impacts connection. Music can help us connect with others, especially those who produce or perform it. We can recite lyrics, dance to melodies, and form a sense of connection through their self-expression. There was a 2017 Australian survey that found that people who actively engage with music, such as dancing, attending music events, singing in a choir, that's the rabble are back there, by the way, and we love them. All of those things have the people who engage in those activities have a higher subjective well-being score than those who don't. And then there are the personal stories. Music can have a profound impact on people's lives in personal ways. For example, some people have shared stories of songs that help them overcome alcoholism, remember difficult relationships and process them, or stay motivated. So I think there are many, many, many long stories of folks who have encounters with music that has changed them. And it may be simply something that we all take for granted and should take time like today to reflect on it and share. I'm going to come back to these questions after I'm done rambling about my life. And those two questions are this, and I'll ask you to participate. So keep them in mind for a minute. How has music affected your life? And how does the music change our Sunday worship or your faith? You can talk about any of those things. I'll leave time at the end of my talk to do that. So, yes, now I'll start the rambling about me, and I'll just, this is very uncomfortable. The talking about me part is very uncomfortable. So I'm just going to do it, and we'll see how it all comes. And my son and wife back there will roll their eyes, and that's all good. So my family was not necessarily a musical family directly, like my parents are not musicians, nor are my siblings directly, although they all love music. But there's music in my family and in my bloodline, which is sort of two different things, interestingly. So I have a cousin who's in Florida, an older cousin who is an organist also. And there's a picture of me as an infant sitting on the organ bench next to him as he's playing, which is kind of a cool and maybe harbinger of the life that I was to come. And then I'll share with you that I am an adoptee, and we learned over the last 10 years, met my birth family, which is a whole wonderful side story that I'll tell you sometime. But in that, I learned that I was related to in my choral world, famous composer Gilbert Martin, who wrote continues to write a lot of choral and organ music, some of which we have heard, I'm sure, in this church. Come to find out he's my uncle. Isn't that wonderful? So the gift is through our bloodline as well. My original church background is Congregational UCC, so I grew up in the Second Congregational Church of Holyoke, Massachusetts. And some of you may have met my mother when she came to visit in August. She'll be back. She was the Christian education director in my church, and so I was a church mouse from the beginning. And I fell in love with the organ, the pipe organ, from a very, very early age, and can talk about and remember being a 7 or 8 year old sitting in the pew with my parents, and at the end of the service, the organist would rev up into an awesome voluntary, and I would go right down the center aisle and watch the organist play that thing. And some of the elders of the church didn't think that was necessarily appropriate at that time, but they gave me a lot of leeway. The music director at the time was a man named Jim Mays, and he was an Anglican, so you can kind of see maybe where the path may have started to get me here. And Episcopal church musician, organist, fabulous organist, very welcoming and wonderful person. And so not only did he let me sit on the bench while he was playing the organ, but after church I would be allowed to sit at the giant console and try out my little tiny piano pieces. And so that was a very formative part of my life. And that feeling of appreciating and loving the organ was something that was obviously deep in my soul and something I've carried through that as a classical musician. Through that, I discovered the music of Johann Sebastian Bach, who lived from 1685 to 1750 in Germany and is really the center of all of classical music. We think of music having an origin point and things getting more and more involved as voices sing two voices together, two parts together, and Bach was the pinnacle of writing music that interwove with each other, and none of the music that we have today could exist without that person's work. And we think of the miracle of his gift and his constantly dedicating his music solely to the glory of God alone. And that is a thing that is deep in our soul with every bit of music we make. And you hear in even the simplest pieces of his music that he'll take a little tiny theme and weave it together in a way that is so gorgeous and beautiful that you didn't know it happened that way. So I'm going to share a little piece of Bach for you. This is the Sinfonia in D minor for piano. You'll hear that little theme at the beginning, and it's short. So I started my first church job at the age of 15. I've served a bunch of different denominations, including Lutheran, Congregational as my background was, Methodist, even a Jewish synagogue for a while, a lot of eye-opening moments. about how music can be very, very different and also very, very spiritual in ways I didn't expect through those times. Each of the churches I served commented, "You're trying to make us Episcopal. Could you stop that?" So eventually, obviously, I came there. I met my wife, Mary Beth, through music. She's back there in the corner. We were involved with a professional choral organization where I was the new accompanist and she was the president of the board, and we were supposed to meet at a dinner, and we both thought, we've got to meet this person, and it's going to be another one of those musicians or another one of those board chairs. And it was a magical moment, beautiful, powerful, spiritual moment for us. And we're still together. It's really wonderful. During that career, I took a break from full-time music to be close to the family when the children were at an age where it made sense for me to be closer to home. And I started a business of service and sales, which was to me similar to selling music, which is often what I might be doing that right now, actually, in the choral setting where you have to get people to come along with you. It's often parallel to sales. But I eventually found that to be thin in that time, and there was music sort of bursting inside me that was important to have happen. And during that time, I went through what I call a compositional storm. I began writing some music that just sort of happened by sitting at a really awful digital piano we had, and the back of an envelope. And the first piece I wrote about 20 pieces of music during a 2-year time for piano. The first one is called Gratitude, and I'll share that with you now, and I'll talk a little bit more about the style after. So this is Gratitude. I made a recording of a bunch of those and shared them with the church I was serving at the time, and one of the parishioners came up and said, "I'm so sorry, but I fell asleep during the music." And I said, "Mission accomplished." My hope was that the music would be a way of escape from the difficulties of the world as we know it, and so that to me was success. During the time that I served at that particular church, I became very enamored with Anglican choral music involving children. So the English style of the men and boys choir, where the youngest sing alongside the adults the same level of music. And I had sort of a dream of starting one, and the church I was serving did not have that tradition. Did it anyway, and so we decided to have a lessons and carols once a year in which we had a choir dedicated to that purpose. And my son Francis was a part of that, maybe under duress, and he's continued to sing all these years. But while building that program up, I was unaware that a church in West Hartford, Connecticut was building it at the same time. And after a period of 5 years, my wife and I had a little conversation where I said, I think my next church job is going to be Episcopal. And she looked at me and said, next church job? I didn't think we were talking about that. And so the move to St. John's, West Hartford, which was my first Episcopal church, where I served for the past 10 years, was a real true gift from God. The story of getting there is one that I won't get into, which is almost as crazy and God-given as the story of my coming here. Those are two great stories that I would save for another day. So my last 10 years were spent working with a choir like that, where we would have 7-year-olds learn the Duruflé Requiem and sing that alongside the adults. And so a lot of my excitement about coming here to All Saints is the robust children's program, working with Emily and making that happen as we go along. Meanwhile, I kept writing some music, and I'll share one more with you. Basically, my compositional style took roots from my childhood, so it's sort of a mix of Vince Guaraldi, the jazz artist, and then 80s pop artists like Sting, Phil Collins, Billy Joel. How many love those guys? Yep. It was just growing up in the 80s. That was the time. And then a little George Winston on the side, and some Maurice Duruflé, Impressionism on the other side of it. And so I will share. This is the last piece I'll share, and then we'll talk a little bit about music here and your stories. And this is a setting of "Be Thou My Vision," the great hymn. So I keep doing this work because I believe that music is truly accessible to everyone, and that it is the true beauty of the true beauty of this is that it is a gift to and from God we do together. I think some profound examples of the breadth of this are our neighbors here, St. Luke's, and my neighbors back in Hartford, Christ Church Cathedral, both having a choir that has homeless folks singing in it. That's the mission of it. Exciting things like that. St. John's in West Hartford, where I served, had a community music camp that brought music to folks, children, especially that didn't have access to that type of thing. There's a parallel project here in Atlanta called the Atlanta Music Project that does that very same thing, and an after-school program for them as well. To be able to bring inspiration and joy to children who do not have those possibilities in their school or in their home. Music brings all sorts of people together and expands our worldview. In my first year here, I'm spending time learning a lot from Justin, who did the job on his own for the better part of a year, from our wonderful clergy, from Simon, from Kirk Rich, from Ray and Beth Chenault, how things go, big milestones like Canuga, All Saints Sunday, Christmas Eve, etc., and at the same time asking the question, what can All Saints be musically for Atlanta as we move forward? The jazz series is a wonderful step forward in that direction, and how can we expand that into other offerings? How might the large number of people who can walk here be enriched by music that we do in this building, on this block? A community choir, musical education for children, collaborations with the many arts establishments here. My work right now is asking those questions and connecting with people in Atlanta who have similar goals. So if you know some of those folks that I should know, please help me to meet them. All of this music allows us to feel where words often do not. My goal has always been to help that along. In fact, words sort of give us a pass to not feel. So how about let's take our music even a little bit more seriously? All of it is love. No church has ever felt closer to that ideal than All Saints, with so much music surrounding us and so much music coming from within. Your singing each Sunday is a giant thing and rises above even the work we put into learning and presenting choral anthems or organ music. Your singing tells your story of faith and the story of decades of faith in this church, just as mine is growing through that. It's more than the soundtrack of our faith, it's the soul of it. And our sharing of it connects us all in joy, in sorrow, and in God. So, you've been thinking about the answers to those questions, right? How has music affected your life, and what would you like to share? Yeah, Asa.
Music's mystified me, ever since I was this big, my music teacher would actually play the works of Steve Reich for us. Like, it's gonna rain, just these crazy walls of sound. It was the first time I realized that music could be anything, and that was kind of a triumphant moment for me. And personally, I'm sad. Cancer in Delaware, Massachusetts, and it brings you together. It makes you experience things you would never experience on your own, and that collaborative aspect, Oh, it rocks. Really does, yeah.
I want to point out that folks, if we're live streaming that, folks only heard "It Rocks," and that's a good way to.
Yeah.
Thank you for
incredible
sharing that.
stuff,
Other folks who would like to share? I hope so. I left a lot of time. Here. Thank you.
So in our culture, music is part of everything. We sing when we're happy, we sing when we're sad, we sing at weddings, we sing at everything. Sometimes too much singing. So for me, music has been a part of my entire life, just because it is a part of everything that happens. I think that the time that I recognized how much music was a part in our culture was my first protest march in the U.S. and people were chanting, not singing, and I was like, this is really boring. We need somebody to start singing. And I had never thought about how central music was in our lives. We lived in England. I sang in church choirs growing up, and the opportunity to connect with people from very different walks of life. The choir that I sang in Bromley, Kent, had 8-year-olds and 70-year-olds. And so being in rehearsal and learning about people who I would not have spent time with otherwise. So I think that music really does have that thing of bringing us together.
Wonderful. And Naomi, the audition process for our choir is really welcoming and open.
I'll say that music was my first memory of church. I was very, very young, and I was living with my grandparents, and my grandfather was a Methodist pastor. And apparently I sat at the age of 3 on the front row and sang Pistol Packing Mama, because I didn't know the words to the hymns. So
I can believe that.
my sense of church is deeply tied to my sense of music.
Wonderful.
I'll speak to that audition process. I came to All Saints for probably close to 15 years and had sung in church choirs and had sung in other groups in school and such, but was really intimidated to join the choir here. And was intimidated to even walk past them for a while. I wouldn't even go take communion at the altar. I'd be like, I'll just go to the side because you got to walk past the choir. But was compelled to come sing for a couple directors ago and try, and it's been the most beautiful experience. And it's the nicest group of people, so please don't be intimidated by people in the robes. From the moment I sat down, everyone has been like another family, which musicians always are everywhere you go. Now I've got my choir family friends. And it's allowed me to have a venue to express my faith publicly in a way I hadn't in a long time.
Big fan of the music in this church. It's a long tradition that you are carrying forward in such a fine way. Music is what brought me to this church 22 years ago, and it certainly sustained me for many other reasons, particularly the community that this embraces. I'm just going to say, too, though, that we are blessed to have you here, and we thank you for being with us. I'm going to suggest that we get your car keys, and I'm going to put them in the safe deposit box of Truist Bank. You're never leaving.
Can I at least go home? Very kind. Thank you. Very kind.
Hey, I am actually a cellist and a composer. First, beautiful playing. My relationship to music. What I really liked what you said was sort of demystifying the idea that music is only for just the trained, people that are trained. Like, actually music is for all. I think humans are all just kind of musical people. But yeah, I think for me, actually this was really where I started connecting with music in Carol's choir. Yeah, I still remember the first piece I ever sang here. And then it just went from there. And I'm really happy that you're here. And please inspire the kids in the primary choir. Yes.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
What you brought forth for me with an experience in Israel, because on Palm Sunday we walked down from Bethany to the Mount of Olives, and there was this enormous crowd, and so we all were singing hymns in English, and all of a sudden behind us was a group of Germans who were walking down singing exactly the same hymns in German, and it was so neat because it's worldwide.
That's right. Wonderful, bringing us together.
So I grew up in Connecticut at St. John's, West Hartford, and I sang in Scott's choir. I am not his son, but I dealt with that man for 10 years, and I honestly can say that he changed my life. In 8th grade, my voice had done that thing that happens to guys' voices, and youth choir was not working anymore. And I almost decided that I was kind of done with church music, and he pulled me into his office and he said, "I'm not done with you yet." And so then I became the organ scholar there, and he started teaching me organ, and I got to play here this morning, which was a real delight. And it has brought me all over the world, to Morocco, to Italy, to France, and getting to do the Duraflay Requiem this past summer in France and seeing how college students really struggled with it made it all that much more amazing that you had a group of, 15 7-year-olds, essentially, 7 through 12-year-olds, and you taught that same piece. It was just really fantastic to be able to see that.
I think it's a little bit of a miracle that this has worked out. So the plan, of course, was for me to be at Canuga, and that means we need help here to make Sunday go. And so Justin was here, and Ted is he's studying organ and music education at Mercer, oddly enough. And so for him to fill in this week and next week, as we've had one music person absent, has been great. So all of a sudden, music's transformative power is right here in this room. Very cool. Thanks for sharing, Ted. Ways that music has shaped you. There got to be some stories. I don't mean to put people on the spot, but a favorite song, something you'd like to have at your funeral. Not that we're pushing that on you as a soon upcoming thing. Denny.
I kind of grew up, well, I was grown up, but during the folk mass at the time. So, and I played in a band and played the bass, fiddle, and the guitar. So that's kind of my music. But the funeral, also I was on staff for teenagers at Camp Michael for a few years. And this isn't a bad thing, but it would be hard to get their attention when we were celebrating the Eucharist. And so the one way that we found that could get them all together is to sing John Denver, "You Fill Up My Senses." And so it's always been a holy song to me. And so that's something that we've talked about at my funeral. I think we have different feelings about where about it's going to be. But
What was the thing?
it's John Denver, "You Fill Up My Senses."
Oh, that was the one.
Yeah,
Yes.
right. That's it. Yeah. And because it's and it was a holy song to all these kids.
Yeah.
And so it's just what's holy to some people is holy to other people.
Absolutely. Yeah, totally agree. You may win this argument. Other thoughts?
Wait, hold up.
I think it's a point of humility that nobody hums the sermon, But, what a friend we have in Jesus. Like the kind of things we call on in times of trouble, they're songs we sang as little kids. And it's so powerful. I don't know what it is about it, but it really touches the heart.
Reaches past where words end.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Go, Jenny.
Well, my first music was when my parents sent me to piano lessons at 8. And 8 to 12, the piano teacher tried to teach me how to sight read. And I finally realized I couldn't do that. And in the meantime, learned that I could play by ear. And the easiest things to play by ear were the church hymns that I would hear all the time. And the first, kind of after I took piano lessons, was at St. Philip's when Sam Cobb was kind of up there with the youth people, and he played the piano, and he played Leaning on the Everlasting Arms. And that has maybe two chords, maybe three, I don't know. And so I could play that. And that was the first thing I learned that I could play on the piano. And I, since then, have been trying to learn more and more. And so about 20 years ago, I decided, well, I could play some of these church music on the piano. I'll try the organ. And fortunately, a couple of organists encouraged me to do that. And so I've been, for the past 20 years, considered myself an aspiring amateur organist. And I find I'm a slow learner. But I do love playing and have had some public playing of the organ, which has been fun. And I'm really grateful to you for letting me practice here on the Keenan organ Tuesday mornings. So that's a big part of my life, is doing that.
Yeah. Yes, Faye is at our big organ every Tuesday morning if you want to come in and hear him. And you do some playing at Canterbury Court as well. Yeah.
Yeah, and practicing there lets me play at Canterbury Court when they need me.
Great. Yeah. It's never too late in life to start a new thing. And yeah. Any other things you'd like to share about your own experience with music before we break? Obviously, the choir people know it's time to run away. Well, I am grateful for all of you and for this parish for the warm welcome that you've all brought me just personally, but also your singing, as I said before. So keep doing it. Don't be afraid. If you're out there in the pew and there's stuff in the bulletin, you sing that music. We're all doing that together as we create liturgy and worship each week. And so I thank you. Have a wonderful day.